Richtig, you speak very good English.
And inside, the heart of Hitachi's Luminar Video is precision engineered of extra durable space-age materials. Better engineered, best warranty. That's the Hitachi Touch.
Get the Hitachi Touch at Haney Sewing and Sound on Union Trunk Road in Maple Ridge. Drop in and see a Hitachi demonstration soon.
BCTV, our best showing.
Good morning. I know that a number of viewers were as appalled as I was last week when I interviewed the Auditor General of Canada, Kenneth Dye, on a section of his report which nobody seems to have looked at. The immigration scams, the immigration rackets, the apparent inefficiency of Axworthy's department in many, many areas. And as a result of that program, I have in my studio this morning a delightful family of potential German immigrants who have been living in Smithers, BC. There's Horst Isenberg, Silke Isenberg, Simone Isenberg, and Horst's wife, Christa Isenberg. And it just may be, when you tie their position in with what's in the Auditor General's report, that a considerable or grave injustice may well be done on Saturday to this family of obviously good potential immigrants. We'll talk to the Isenbergs later in the program. But first this morning, one of the leaders of the Tory party, Michael Wilson, the finance critic from Etobicoke Centre in Ontario, who want to find out what he thinks about Trudeau's sunbathing excursion to Malaysia and a few other financial matters and crises in this country, including trust companies. Don't get nervous. We'll give you some of the details after the break. Michael Wilson is a finance critic of the Tory party. If you could be non-partisan reasonably for a moment, do you see any bright signs on the horizons for the economy in Canada?
There are some bright signs, Jack. We've had interest rates coming down quite a bit over the last little while. They should be coming down further. They must come down further before we can have a healthy economy, but they have come down far enough that together with the provincial housing programs, there has been some stimulus to the housing industry, and that so far has been the bright spot on the horizon.
But how long do you think we've bottomed out yet, really? Because
no, we haven't bottomed out. We haven't bottomed out. Some people, I think, are hoping. They're saying that they think we've bottomed out, and we have bottomed out. I say it's still a little bit of faith, a little bit of hope, but there is still, I think, some difficult times ahead. I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I think we've got to be realistic that we haven't hit the bottom as yet.
Do you support the thesis by our new finance minister, Lalonde, that we can buy our way out of the recession with consumer spending? Although how the devil you can do that in some of the BC towns where the only people working are the civil servants and the teachers, do you subscribe to that at all?
I do subscribe to it in the sense that the consumer has been building his financial position through paying down his mortgage as much as he can because of the high interest rates. I think the fact that the stock market had such a substantial increase has left some consumers with a considerable improvement in their total net worth. So there is the potential there. The key is giving the consumer the confidence that he's going to be able to retain his job, that will give him that sense that he can go and spend the money rather than keep it in the sock at the bottom of the bed. That's the trick right now. And because the level of confidence is low, because they fear they're going to lose their job, they're not spending the money. So right now they aren't the way out of the recession
No.
until we can unlock that.
Let's talk about trust companies just for a moment, because I noticed the Ontario Trust Company has virtually taken over, as I correct, the assets of Seaway Trust, Greymack, and Crown Trust.
The Ontario government.
The Ontario government
Yep,
has
yep,
done that.
yep.
And then the federal government took control of the assets of three other big companies, Seaway Mortgage and Greymack Mortgage.
Right.
What does this mean? I know there's something involved with flips and flops of billions of dollars with Saudi Arabian buyers. Does that mean one must be a little bit delicate about all trust companies in Canada today?
No, this shouldn't affect other trust companies at all. There's these few trust companies and mortgage companies that have been caught up in this web of transactions involved in that sale of apartments to Saudi Arabia. But the very disturbing part of all this is the lack of information that either the Ontario government or the federal government have given us in order to support what is obviously a very severe action.
Metro Toronto Police, according to the Globe this morning, have put a guard at the head offices of Crown Trust and Greymack while the auditors are going through the book. Have they got some doubts that the assets are not sufficient to meet the liabilities?
They don't know, is what they're telling us. They say they have to get the auditors in there to try to give them a better idea about what is going on. But I think that before the governments took this action, I think that they should have come up with some more specific information. I think the other factor here, and I'm a little nervous about saying this, but I'm not so sure that the companies, that the government should allow the companies to open their doors today until they're able to give the depositors a better idea about what is happening in the companies.
That would only seem to be common sense, would it not?
Well, that's, without knowing all that's going on in the background, that's the first
Well,
thing
where
that
there's a
struck
lack of
me.
confidence in any big financial empire, obviously the public must be reassured and the doors should be closed until the government can tell them the score.
That's right.
Down to politics. What do you think of Trudeau's sunbathing excursion to Malaysia? Is this just a PR job, or will he in fact be able to do us any good in the Pacific Rim?
I think he's at least 2 or 3 years too late. If you recall, Pat Carney and I were working very hard on initiatives when I was the trade minister, and she was here as a very active potential candidate. We were working very hard on trade initiatives to the Far East. We think that that's a very important area for Canada to develop trade. But the federal government has not followed up on those initiatives, and while I'm happy to see him out there, these things take time. It won't result in business overnight. And if he had gone out there right after the election, when he came back in and picked up the initiatives that we had started, we would be feeling the effects of that, the benefits of that today.
Too little, too late.
Too little, too late, unfortunately, and that's the whole story of that government.
Mind you, you're confident, of course, that... well, let me put it this way. Is Joe now totally secure for the leadership convention? Because if you did the old Tory thing of stabbing him in the back, you might not win the next election. Is Joe now secure?
I think that Joe is secure. We'll know in 3 weeks' time, but certainly the signs are there. We're at 45, 46% in the polls, and that, I think, speaks very well for what we have been doing as a party. And Joe's got to take some credit for that, because if we hadn't been doing well, the buck stops on his desk. He would have taken it in the ear. If we hadn't been doing well, he's got to take the other side of it when we are doing well.
Is the only nightmare you have the fact that Trudeau might waltz away and that fellow, what's his name, Turner?
I've forgotten that name.
But if he came up against Joe, you wouldn't have 46% then.
There's a lot of media hype, if I can use
Sure.
that. There's a lot of grasping at straws there on the parts of the Liberals that they say, John is our man. If only we had John Turner in there, we'd be able to whip those Tories. We'd be right up in the polls. I don't see it, because John Turner has been out on the sidelines. He hasn't been right in the middle of it. His record as a finance minister wasn't good.
No.
And if we got him back in there in charge, I think that we'd see pretty clearly that some of the awe that he is held in would disappear pretty quickly.
Oh, I agree entirely. It's media hype for the Liberals. If Joe stumbles, it's on page 1. If Pierre stumbles, nobody takes the picture. Isn't that right?
They wouldn't let them take the picture when he went on the beach yesterday in Malaysia.
The press gang was excluded, were they not?
That's right.
But mind you, your biggest asset at the moment among a couple of million Canadians has got to be Judy Arola. Would you care to explain what she's presenting at the moment as a possibility? And Lalonde must, in some way, be considering it.
Well, I've been away.
Arola's a Minister for Women's Status.
She's status of women, and she's also the mining minister. Now, as I understand it, she wants to. Now, you check me on this because I was away this past week. Now, she wants to take away the tax credit for the tax
exemptions for married men.
For married men.
She says, I want to
just
eliminate
to give it to the women.
Tax deductions for the married men, so there'll be more for the single women.
Yeah.
She doesn't realize that there are still a lot of women who don't work in this country, and that the married man whose wife isn't working needs the exemption.
Sure, that's right.
That's got to give you a couple of million votes at least. Maybe she's gone out of her mind. Now, have you seen either the Tory bagman appointment to the Senate lately or the Pitfield appointment? Which is the worst?
Well, I think that we've probably seen a very good reason to have an elected Senate with the two of them. I'm not comfortable with appointments to the Senate which are basically political payoffs. Pitfield is a longtime friend. He was one of Trudeau's original supporters before he came into the leadership race back in '67. And Bill Kelly he's a very effective Tory finance supporter and fundraiser. And I just think we should have better ways of rewarding these people, but not in the Senate. I would like to see us get to an elected Senate where
you think that
people have to stand up there. Pitfield himself said that he couldn't get elected.
That's right. And he now has his pension up to 100,000 and gets an extra 58,000 as a senator in a time of restraint.
Yeah.
Why do Canadians stand for this?
Plus another pension.
Why do a second Senate pension?
Second Senate pension.
Why do Canadians stand for this? Are we a bunch of apathetic slobs?
I would think that Canadians, when we have 1.5 million Canadians out of work
Unemployed.
today, that they should be up in arms against some of these things.
Here. More with Michael Wilson after the break. We think we're in a bad way in British Columbia provincially at the moment. We've had a number of cutbacks and $1 billion deficit. But surely compared to the likes of Quebec, we've got to be in a reasonably good situation.
Well, you are to some extent, but both Quebec and BC, I guess, are enduring the greatest shock in their provincial government financial position. The federal government, or the provincial government in Quebec, allowed themselves to get too far ahead, or let's be honest, didn't allow themselves in anticipation of election. They were far too generous with their public service, and now have found with the poor economy that they've had to cut back.
They've cut the wages back by legislation, haven't they?
By legislation, 20%, and that is a tremendous jolt to anybody, because whatever you get paid, you build your standard of living and expectations into what you're being paid. So to have to cut back is pretty darn tough. Now, BC, through no fault of their own, but much more the problems in the international markets, the international economy, has seen a tremendous drop in employment and economic activity here, and it's feeding right through into the provincial revenues, so that the government has been forced to cut back because of the size of the deficit that
There
they're
are
facing.
people who suggest here that some of the reason the Americans are so slow in improving their lumber and their housing is because they want to have a good kick at this country to the north, which has been ultra-nationalistic and cut back the Americans' activities in this country. Would you subscribe to any form of conspiracy theory?
I wouldn't say there's a conspiracy theory there. I'll tell you, there is a loss of friendship down there. I don't, I can, certainly with some people there is antagonism towards Canada. But what we have lost in this last 2 or 3 years because of the NEP, because of the way that the Foreign Investment Review Agency was being administered, is we have lost a lot of friends. So that when we go down to Washington and try to plead our case on the lumber countervailing duty or the what's going on, the potential problems in the automotive industry or the fisheries industry or any of these bilateral problems with the United States, they're saying, well, you know, what have you done for us lately? And politics, let's face it, is a game of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. If I owe you something in terms of a favor because you've done something for me, I will repay you. We don't have those favors outstanding.
And that's because of Trudeau, you would tell me.
It's Trudeau, it's Lalonde, it's McGuigan, it's Herb Gray, it's Alan McEachen. All of them have done things, or they've gone down there and said things in the Americans' own backyard, which has got them a little teed off.
I nearly fell off my chair the other day when the Auditor General told me that we're committed to guarantees on, what's it called, Canadair, which are greater than the guarantees on Dome, 1.35 billion. How did we get into that mess?
I'll tell you, Jack, that is a real sore spot for us in the Conservative Party. Canadair, let's face it, has a good aircraft. The Challenger it flies, it's been well accepted, but it costs an awful lot of money, and it's cost an awful lot to get it this far. When they started off, they said it's only going to cost us probably $150 to $200 million to develop this aircraft. Now we're up to this $1.35 billion. The government has just come back to us before Christmas and said we need another $200 million. And before the ink was dry on that request, the minister responsible, your own Jack Austin here, Senator Austin, said we may need another $100 million. And we pressed him a little more, and he said, and that night might not be all. So the problem here is not the quality of the aircraft, but the fact that there doesn't seem to be any control or any accountability or any idea on the part of the government that this 200 or 300 or 400 more is going to be all that's required. It's just a hole in the sea right now.
Well, the Auditor General's report makes it clear to me, anyway, that the Crown corporations can do whatever the devil they like. They're out of control.
There's a good reason for that, too. In Parliament, we put the heat on the ministers. That's our job as opposition members, to try to find out where the government is going off the wrong track. So they are concentrating very much on what's going on in their own departments. But when we got onto these Crown-owned companies like Canadair or Export Development Corporation or whatever, they're over here and they're not paying too much attention to them. And I'll give you one example of it. On Export Development Corporation, that I was responsible for as Minister of Trade, I had 2 meetings within the first 2 months of me taking over that responsibility. And the chairman of Export Development Corporation, on the way out of the second meeting, he said, "Now, sir, you have had double the number of meetings of the last minister."
Jeez, oh.
Now, the last minister had problems on his plate in the department and ignored this very important Crown Corporation, important from the sense that there's a lot of taxpayers' money at stake there, plus the fact that it's very important from our ability to trade with other nations.
Well, I wonder what's going to happen from here on in. Have you any ideas? When are they bound to have an election?
I'm looking at the fall of 1984. I don't see the Liberals wanting to come any sooner than that because, let's face it, when they're 15 points behind in the polls, you know what the outcome's going to be. I think they're wanting to push it off as far as they can in hopes that the economy will turn right.
What's going to happen to our gasoline and fuel oil prices now that there's a vast surplus in the world market? And I believe we're going to have one drop of 1.9 cents a litre on the federal take. Can our gas prices go down automatically now?
No, that's one of the problems with the deal that the governments have done. They can go up, but once they reach a limit of 75% of world price, they can't go up anymore. But the next question is, can they go down if the world price goes down, and the expectations are that it will go down? The answer is no.
How long can this country keep up its fairly generous transfer payments on all the allowances, unemployment insurance, welfare and whatnot, if the economy doesn't improve? Well, 10 years?
No.
5 years?
I can't give you a precise answer, but we have seen The first moves on that in the November budget of 1981, Mr. McEachern brought about drops in the the post-secondary education and healthcare payments to the provinces. That was the first step. We had the second step in the June budget when he put the 6 and 5 limitation on indexation of old age pensions. These are two things that you don't hear the Liberals saying that we're starting to cut away into the our social programs. But that's in effect what they have done.
If you were in power, would you look at the universality of family allowances and give the money to them that needs it? Would you bring in what appears to be needed to be done, some form of means tests?
I don't think that we're at the point where we have to do that, because I don't think that the Liberal government have done the things that they should be doing to get the economy going again. Going back to your question of what Lalonde is saying, is the answer with the consumer? I say the answer is with the consumer. But what he's got to find out, and what he hasn't been able to find out to date, is how to unlock those funds, how to get consumers to spend them. I think that the Conservative Party has some ideas as to how to do that, and we said it publicly. I'm happy to say them again. Lalonde doesn't seem to want to pick up on these, but those are things that, changes that have to be made, and if we do those things, then I don't think we have to see any further cutbacks in our whole net of social
Let's
programs.
see if there's any interest in the Tories on the West Coast. Haven't seen Carney for a while. I hope she's talking to me again. This is Michael Wilson, finance critic for the Tory party, from Etobicoke Centre, which is somewhere in the far-flung wilds of eastern Canada. After the break. By the way, did you welcome with open arms the great humanitarian NDP, platform put forward by the 8 bishops in Toronto? You greedy capitalist, you don't have any reasonable sympathy for the Whitekers.
Well, you know, I was happy to see the bishops do this.
Oh, I think speak out.
I think they should be there on these very important issues. But as they don't have any monopoly on the moral positions of the day, we don't have a monopoly on the economic issues of the day. But I think once they put their report on the table, then it's up for discussion, and there's some parts of it that I just fundamentally disagree with.
Go ahead, ma'am, about trust companies. You have a question on depositors' insurance.
Oh, yes. I should like to ask Mr. Wilson if not he and other MPs should be pressing to increase the insured indemnity on deposits in banks and trust companies from the present $20,000 to about $100,000, because when the $20,000 was brought in many, many years ago, about 10, 15 years ago, that was deemed to be a fine amount, but with inflation, $100,000 a more realistic amount. Moreover, many people now have that sum of money in RRSPs.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I was part of a government committee, or a parliamentary committee, which made the recommendation about 6 months ago to increase it to about $60,000, which is the amount that it should be today if inflation had occurred from the time that it was brought in at $20,000. You're absolutely right. The government is considering this. For the life of me, I don't know why they've held off. I would think that this current problem with Crown Trust and Greymac will bring it about very quickly.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead from Victoria.
Oh, hello, Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
2 points. One is, in the Singapore business, the minister, at least the Prime Minister, has been talking about financing light rail transit there.
Yes.
Whatever it is. I wonder if we'll be stuck with putting up billions of dollars for that, like we are in the New York one. And the other question is, why doesn't the Conservative Party go to work now on creating an elected, or the machinery to start creating an elected Senate? You'd win millions of votes, you know.
Well, as I
You'd
said,
lose about a handful of supporters in Ottawa.
we'd lose an awful lot more Liberal supporters in Ottawa if we had that elected Senate.
But you how to do it.
Yes, I agree with you, and you probably are aware, sir, that Senator Duff Roblin, who is obviously a senator himself, he has been one of the foremost proponents of an elected Senate, and we're looking at this right this very minute in a caucus committee as well as in a parliamentary committee on parliamentary reform.
You really have nothing to lose, you know.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that it's going to come.
Mind you, I noticed that when he was in Malaysia, Trudeau said, I don't know about guarantees for this and that, but they were quick enough to give Bombardier the massive guarantees of what was then low interest rates of 9% to pick up the New York subway job, weren't they?
That's right. The Bombardier. I guess the biggest problem that I had with that New York City deal was that here a country of the size of Canada and with the economic problems that we have, giving subsidized finance to one of the most powerful country in the world economically and probably in many other
But that was to
every other way.
create jobs in Quebec.
That's it's to create jobs in Quebec. It's also something that I just don't think we should have to get into in this country. But I think that what they're talking about in this trip to the Far East is further guarantees of that sort. But I don't think that there will be nearly the amount of subsidy involved because the market rates now are much closer to the subsidized
reality.
rate.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I'd like to ask Mr. Wilson if he thinks that devaluing our Canadian dollar would be helpful in increasing our competitive position in the world markets and easing our unemployment situation here in Canada.
I think if we devalued the dollar, we would have some initial benefits in the sense of helping us increase exports to other countries. But I don't see the devaluation of the currency as being a longer-term objective or a longer-term solution. I think what we have to be doing now is introducing industrial development policies which help the competitive position of our industries today. Because if we don't introduce those, all the devaluation of the currency does is buy us a little bit of time. And if we haven't introduced the industrial development policies, then we're going to be into another devaluation down the road, and that leads to more inflation.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
I'd like to ask Mr. Wilson what his party would intend to do for the economic recovery of companies such as Canadair and de Havilland, who just recently got their $200 million, taking into consideration that 2,700 employees have been laid off at Canadair, and a major Vancouver company has had to cut back.
Well, you raise what is a very, very complex question. It's not just as simple as what Jack and I have been talking about. There's more at stake than just the jobs that you refer to as well. Now, I think that what we have called for, what I personally have called for with the Senator Austin, is a review, an independent review of Canadair to see whether that Challenger program is viable, whether in the long run we can get our money back. Because the big question you have to ask yourself is this just money to create jobs in Canadair? Because if it is, they're very, very expensive jobs. Or is it an investment that the taxpayer of Canada can get a return on? He doesn't know that answer. Ed Lumley, who authorized the $200 million payment before, he didn't know the answer. And that's the answer that I think taxpayers should have before we authorize what probably will be another $500 million worth of spending for Canadair to create 2,500, or the total employment of Canadair, I think it's something like 12 or 13,000.
What was the local company that was affected by the Canadair?
Canadian Aircraft Products.
Where is that, out in Richmond?
Yeah, they had the subcontracts for the fuel cells and the horizontal stabilizers, which have been cut back and put about 80 men out of work.
Well, you see, the problem, sir, in that, I recognize what you're saying here, that if there's a cutback in Canadair, it affects other parts of the country, including right here in Vancouver. But if the government is maintaining Canadair at a level of employment or a level of industrial activity that's unrealistic, sometime down the road, we're all going to pay as taxpayers, and I say that the sooner we can find out exactly where we stand, the better it will be, and then we can spend our money at trying to redirect that activity in
Fair
Canadair to more realistic and more viable enterprises.
Thank you, sir. The Auditor General described the Canadair financing to me as potentially Canada's Concorde. Half a dozen planes and close it down. That's the interpretation I took. More with Mike Wilson after the break. Mike Wilson, Tory Finance Critic. When does the House go back?
Next Monday, 17th.
Oh, good. If you see Sven Robinson and Mark Rose, give them my regards.
I'll give them your very best.
Yeah, the two that think I'm an abominable inquisitor, will you please?
I don't think, oh, they
Can you believe that?
Not you.
Nice fellow like me?
Nice, I just can't believe that.
No. Go ahead to Mike Wilson.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
That's you, sir. Go ahead to Mike.
Mr. Wilson, why doesn't government show some restraint in the salaries that they pay to these people? These newly appointed senators, they're going to be multimillionaires before their terms are expired. All politicians spend thousands of dollars every year traveling to these southern shores to study snow removal. Surely by now that they know everything about snow removal that there is without going to the Mediterranean every 6 months.
That's a good question. An MP now gets something like $67,100 a year.
Well, what we get is it's about $50,000 salary plus expenses because we have 2 homes and other expenses that are related to that.
But you didn't have to take 6% this year.
Well, we could get into a debate on that. I think that we had to show some form of restraint, and in fact, we did take a salary cut in the middle of last year. There was a cutback from what we were getting paid to.
But it widens the gap between MPs and the 1.5 million unemployed, doesn't it?
It certainly does. There's no question of that. But at the same time, my problem with what we get paid is not the remuneration so much as in the pensions. I think that was where we have some changes.
Go ahead from Terrace, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster.
Yes.
I would like to question Mr. Wilson. The former finance critic John Crosby was in a short review one time around Ottawa, and at the end of the interview, as he was walking off, one of the reporters asked him on the sly whether what he would do to get elected because of our huge deficit. Then, I believe, just slightly below 20 billion, and now possibly ranging to 30 billion. And he said, if I told you, we would not get re-elected. I was wondering if, or get elected, period, rather. I was wondering if you could tell me that although the measures will be a little starchy, that the old Iron Lady has proved that most people do want some good conservative input and really want the people to be held in line. Maybe not 20% like in Quebec, but at least the public service held to zero while the rest of us get a job anyway. Wait for your comment. Hang up.
Well,
that's a very perceptive question.
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, and I think that Canadians understand today that we can't be going on with 20% increases or 15% increases in government spending. That's what's happening today. So there will have to be some cutback in the rate of growth in government spending, and what we have said is we want to keep the rate of growth in government spending within the inflation rate in the country, which today would be about 10%. Now that means that there will have to be some prioritizing of government spending, and the same way as any family or any business has to say, here's what are most important in our business activities or in our family expenditures, and here's what our least important expenditures are. Let's drop those items off the bottom. And having done that, we should be able to bring the government spending into line with what we can afford. But I think the other thing that I would like to do is not to leave this on a totally negative note of cutting back. The way we'll get that huge deficit down, which, as you say, could range as high as 30 billion, the government's figure today is about 24 billion, what we have to do is get the economy moving again. And that's where we have put forward a number of specific proposals to give ideas to the government and to Canadians as to how the economy could get moving again. And that way, I think everybody would be happier. It wouldn't be all cutback, but it would be some growth, some cutback in order to bring
there will be a
things into
great
balance.
tendency by the Tories to do the Thatcher, because that's what you've been telling the Liberals to do.
No, that's not true, Jack. We have been telling them that they should cut back, because I don't think anybody can justify today 17, 20% increase in government spending. And before you stop me and say, well, isn't that all in social programs, I pointed out in my speech to Lalonde's statement in October that the increase and the administrative costs, the overhead costs, the non-essential costs of running the 12 largest government departments is increasing 17.1%. Those are government-owned, the government's own figures. That surely can be cut back.
The one thing is that the unemployed cannot understand why federal civil servants should get 6 and 5 and provincial government get 6.5 and 5 when there are 240,000 unemployed in BC. They can't understand why anyone in the government service gets an increase when they can't pay their taxes.
Well, I mean, if I had had my preferences, Jack, I would have liked to have seen some further cutback. But we supported that 6 and 5 program as a party because we were going from a level of 12% to a level of 6%, and we felt that that was a darn good first step.
Go ahead, please. Last call to Michael Wilson.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Two quick questions. If Lotto Canada and all the other lotteries in Canada are voluntary taxation, how is it that we never get a question of how much they're skimming off the top in Ottawa for administrative costs? And my second one is, if we have a 12.8% unemployment rate, what about these so-called people that have dropped through the net, run out of unemployment insurance, gone off welfare? What would be the official rate if this were taken into consideration? Thank you.
I think the official rate would be something in the 17%, 18% range if you took all the people who've just given up looking for a job. And it's a very, very serious problem, that people who are saying there's no hope for me to get a job. We have to get the economy going to give something to those people.
Maybe now's the time for massive public spending a la the Western European Social Democrats.
No, that's not the answer. That's a very short-term solution, but it leaves that high deficit there for us and our children, our grandchildren to pay for. That's not the answer, Jack. The answer to me is tax incentives to get people spending money to get that money into the economy in a way that will generate employment, which will in turn generate the tax returns that the government needs to finance the tax.
My thanks to Michael Wilson, Tory Finance Critic. And do you hope that there'll be no ripples, no stabs in the back for Joe in Winnipeg?
That's right.
And do you think that'll come about? No ripples, no stabs?
I would like to say it would. I'm a little too realistic to say that. We're not over the hurdle.
Next, the Isenberg family from Germany, caught in the bight, B-I-G-H-T, of immigration, while the whole immigration system, it seems, is full of loopholes, but not for them. After the break. I've got to set the stage for this interview, because I've told you you're going to meet a German family who want to stay in this country, and they're apparently under a voluntary leave, a deportation order if they leave voluntarily, something like that, on Saturday of this week. Now, when I first spoke to this family, I listened in my normal manner and said, well, no, you don't fit the regulations. Ipso facto, quod erat demonstrandum, you got to go. And then this document came into my hand. This document, Report of the Auditor General to the House of Commons of Canada. And in that document is the black and white confirmation, after an expert investigation, of all the worst things I've been sniffing around at in the immigration system in Canada. In other words, all of a sudden, and I was the first reporter to ask the Auditor General about this immigration section, because most reporters, including yours truly, backs off the immigration story in case somebody says, oh, that Webster's a racist. I am not a racist. I am all for legal immigrants to this country, coming in properly. But when I read the report of the Auditor General, I can tell you quite bluntly that Axworthy and the Immigration Department are turning a blind eye to dozens of illegal immigration rackets. There are all kinds of scams and abuses. We all know about the marriages of convenience. We all know about the pregnancies of convenience, but we don't all know that there are illegal immigration networks about which it would seem some parts of the Immigration Department would act and others don't. Now, it's quite obvious, as Kenneth Dye told me the other day, that the Immigration Headquarters doesn't have control over its operations, doesn't know its elbow from a hole in the ground. And just think of this, 10% of all immigrants to this country are not admitted in the legal manner. Now, I'm not talking about forgeries. I'm talking about the fact that 10% of all immigrants are allowed in by ministerial discretion, by order in council. So if you have 151,000 immigrants, I think it was in the last period, 15,000 were let in after they were in the country. And I can document that from this report in spades. Some of the other rackets, of course, are great. There's the courier parent racket, where the adults qualify for immigration status, they bring their dependent children to Canada, and then they go back to the native country. Half of all the parents with children under 21 went back to their country of origin, but in the meantime, the children or the immigrants bring in fiancés, the fiancés bring in they get married, become Canadians, bring in their mothers and fathers. The mothers and fathers bring in the sons and daughters. The daughters bring in the fiancés. The next lot of fiancés bring in their mothers and fathers. Because on April 20th, 1978, it became much easier to bring in dependent parents under this family reunification program. And the family reunification program is as full of holes as Swiss cheese. Dye's report kicks the devil out of the competency of the Immigration Department, saying that this doesn't know what's happening, that doesn't know what's happening, there's no proper liaison. Which brings me 65,000 ministerial permits and visas to obtain landed immigrant status between, I've got a date in that, 1978 and 1981. Even where they know there are criminals in the country, they don't check them out. And they don't make an effort many occasions to deport them. And one of the reasons that the immigration doesn't work in getting the baddies out the country is that customs officials apparently fail to use the microfiche system with the names of the undesirable aliens. It really is a shocker. And then we come to the Isenbergs. Now, your name, sir?
My name is Horst Isenberg.
How old are you, Horst?
36 years
36.
old.
Your name, ma'am?
Krista Isenberg.
A little louder.
Krista Isenberg.
Krista Isenberg.
Yeah.
How old are you?
34 years.
34. Now, before I come back to them again, their English ain't all that good, although I have Barbara de Jong here as an interpreter if I need you, Barbara. Let me make this quite clear. They came to this country without the proper papers. And I'm going to try it on you, Krista. Why did you come to this country without visas, without landed immigrant papers?
Why? Because the immigration in Bonn said for 1 year we can come of immigration visa, and then in this time we can give the people to the immigration.
In other words, who was it phoned? Where were you living in Germany at the time, Horst?
The name is Hammingkeln, from town.
Near Duisburg.
Near Duisburg, that's right.
And you decided you'd been in Canada twice before on short visits, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Had they been in Canada 2 times before on short visits?
That's right.
That's correct, okay. So you phoned the Canadian office in Bonn.
Yeah.
And what did the office in Bonn tell you?
I phoned first with the Canadian consulate in Bonn, and I say, I come back from Canada from a holiday, and I like this country, and maybe I will go to Canada with my family. I have 2 kids, and what must I doing? I will go to Canada. And the lady says to me, what do you doing in work? And I say, I work with concrete and chemical and fireplace. And this lady says to me, "Tis need Canada, concrete worker." And I say, I have problems with the kids in the school. No, that's not problem. You look a half year later, the kids speak very good English and you have not trouble.
But when you spoke to Bonn, you didn't go to Bonn.
No, no.
You don't must to Bonn.
You don't?
Must to Bonn.
You didn't have to go to Bonn.
Yeah.
She spoke to you on the phone and she told you to get some documents.
Yeah.
What documents? What papers?
Police papers.
Police record?
Medical.
A medical inspection.
Yeah.
Where did you get, you got the police papers of course, where did you have the medical inspection?
From my doctor.
From your own doctor?
Yeah.
Not from the immigration doctor in Bonn?
No.
Now you asked me to believe, and I believe you, that you were told that if you went to Canada by Bonn, do you know the name of the woman?
No, that's a problem.
What date was that?
20.
25th.
Papers.
May
22nd.
22nd.
May 22nd.
Yeah.
So you went to your own doctor, and then you came to Canada first with the two children.
Yes.
And do you really? Were they not stupid coming here without any papers at all, except from their own doctor and the police?
Well, they had everything what the immigration woman told them, and she also said, that's what Christian Haus told me, that as soon as they are in Canada, they should apply for immigration, get their application papers and fill them out.
And were they told that they could become immigrants after coming here as visitors?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you swear to that?
Yeah.
But you'd been in Canada before. Surely you knew, surely they knew they had to have a formal approval before they came.
Wusstet ihr vorher genau, dass sie erstmal eine Billigung haben musste, dass sie erstmal wieder hier reinkam, weil ihr ja schon zweimal vorher in Kanada wart?
Nein.
Das war nur ausschließlich als Besuch.
Yeah, it was
only for
a
visit.
So they never
Only for
occupied
visit.
themselves with
So
a
you
job.
came for a visit?
Yes.
Yeah.
You told them you were coming for a visit and wanted to stay.
Yeah.
And now you have been told out.
Jetzt hat man euch gesagt, ihr müsst wieder raus.
Yeah.
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 It's very difficult. Take a break and come back. See, when you come to, they came to Canada, the Isenbergs came to Canada, perhaps naively, and they tell me on the word of an official in the consulate in Bonn. Now, I know there is confusion in the immigration department between offices overseas and offices here, because it's in the book. It's in the book in spades. Confusion all over the immigration department. So normally I wouldn't have put them on the air, but on this occasion I thought with 65,000 ministerial permits, discretionary permits, you might as well let the Isenbergs in. You are a cement worker to trade.
Yeah.
And you were told you could work if you could find a job a Canadian could not fill. Did
Yeah.
you find one?
Yeah, that's right. I found.
You found one?
Yeah.
But you didn't get the okay to work, did you?
No.
You put that in German.
Yeah. I think he understood that. Yeah. Manpower wouldn't get him, give him the permission to work.
Even though he found jobs?
Yeah, and even though his employer said, yeah, we want Horst to do that job.
Where did you find work?
My uncle helped me, and I drive to Alaska, nicht Alaska, a little bit before.
Alberta.
Oh, no.
No, near Alaska, in the bush.
Oh, yeah.
In bush. And I spoke with a superintendent, and this man says, okay, you specialist from beton and metric and concrete and metric, and okay, you can work here.
But when you told Canada Manpower about it, they wouldn't say okay.
Help me bitte.
Yeah. Aber Manpower wollte dann nicht das Okay geben.
Na, that's right. The first letter from the superintendent, this is the copy here.
Yeah.
It's not good letter. You need a letter from the government. And I drive second in the bush. And the superintendent writes a new letter for me. And I go back to the government and I say, here's a new letter.
Still didn't get the okay. Okay, now next thing. How much money did you bring to Canada with you?
15.
Little louder, Krista.
15,000.
Shout.
15,000.
15,000.
Yeah.
Now, where are you living? You're living in Smithers.
Yes.
What are you living in?
In a trailer.
Is that your trailer?
Yes, that's my trailer.
What did it cost?
$48,000.
48,000. And did your mother and father buy that for you?
Yes, in July.
In July. So you've got that in Smithers.
Yes.
Yes. Now you have two delightful children who go to school. Which school? Your children go to which school? St. Joseph's School. St. Joseph's School in Smithers. See?
Yes.
Is that right? St. Joseph's School in Smithers. Now they shouldn't have been going to school at all. These children should, because they're not landed immigrants. Is that correct?
That's right. I think it was the community who said, I mean, Christianshorst, because I have been there and saw everything what was going on. They have so many friends, and they thought, well, we will have Simone going to school, because otherwise she will be out of studying for such a long time.
That's right. Here it says here, and this is signed by the staff of St. Joseph's School in Smithers. We, the staff of St. Joseph's Schools, are writing you on behalf of Horst and Krista Isenberg and their family. Eager to assimilate, very nice people. We believe the Isenbergs have been penalized by a bureaucratic error made by the staff in the embassy in Bonn. We feel the Isenbergs would be a credit to our community and feel confident in our endorsement of their personalities and situation. And you've had no encouragement at all. It looks as if you are supposed to leave the country on the 15th of January.
Yes.
Eh? Well, let me tell you this ain't so good either. I've spoken to Mary Perry, who's in the minister's office in Ottawa at the moment. On September the 15th, the Isenbergs were given an extension to visitor status so he could find a job. No jobs available. Well, you found a couple of jobs, but they wouldn't okay them.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the immigration people in Bonn deny strongly, advising the Isenbergs that he could obtain immigrant status after entering the country as a visitor. December the 17th, another 2-month extension. And Murray Perry says, immigration is bent over backwards for this family. They know the rules, not their first visit. We believe they're trying to circumvent them, not prepared to give another extension. Well, that's not good news. This is what the man in Ottawa tells me.
Maybe I should tell them in a couple of words.
At the moment, the man I spoke to in Ottawa is not prepared to give another extension.
Yeah.
But maybe we should go a different route. Have you got a lawyer?
Habt ihr einen Rechtsanwalt?
Yeah, we haben, yes, we
Kind of.
spoke with the lawyer.
You spoke with a lawyer. Well, let's leave that for the moment. I'm going to take a break and you're going to meet the kids. Smile. What's your name?
Silk.
Again? Say it again. Come on.
Silk.
Silk. How old are you, Silk?
5.
5. What's your name?
Simone.
How old are you, Simone?
8 years.
8 years old. Now, do you like Canada?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you speak very good English, don't you?
Yes.
Eh? Have you been learning it at school?
Yes.
Do you know any little poems or any little songs?
Yes.
What poems or songs do you know?
Oh, Canada.
Okay, sing me "Oh Canada." You've got to stand up for it, yes.
Oh, Canada, our home and need to friends, to be to love. In our sons come in, with glory hearts we see we rise, the true north strong and free. From far and bright, oh Canada, we stand on God for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. We stand on God, we stand on God for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on God for thee.
Very good. Now, how long have you been at school now? Just for 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months?
I don't know.
You don't know. What do you like best at school? What do you like? What do you enjoy most at the school? What's your favourite subject?
Read.
Reading. Are you at school too? Does she go to school? Horst.
She goes in the kindergarten.
She goes into kindergarten. Well, I don't know what the next step is, as I've made it perfectly brutally clear. They entered the country to apply to become a landed immigrant in this country. The book says you cannot apply from within the country. That's what the book says. But the book doesn't work, as I've told you. 10% of all immigrants applied and landed, or were given landed status from within the country. 10%. And ministerial permits are showered about the country like confetti. 65,000. Here's a young couple, strong, willing, learning the language. He's a tradesman, concrete worker, expert in metric, can do all kinds of things. They've got 50,000 invested in the trailer already, and my position is that one more ministerial permit, more or less, wouldn't make a damn bit of difference in this case. Especially, I mean, I couldn't have said that a week ago until I saw this report. You know, this report would blow your mind. Engagements and marriages of convenience, pregnancies of convenience, unverifiable and dubious family relationships, false or altered documents, and they don't chase the illegals to get out the country because the procedures are not very good in Axworthy's immigration department. Yes. Okay, I'll go to the phones after the break. Well, in case you just tuned in, the Isenbergs are a very nice family from Germany who took the wrong advice, or bad advice, or were given wrong information by an official of the Canadian consulate in Bonn, came to this country as visitors in the belief that they could alter the status from within. That, of course, they can't do, normally. But here we have, we've had 2 major amnesties in this country. 12,000 first from China, a number of years ago, illegal immigrants. And then we had another massive one later on, which brought in the Haitians and the Jamaicans and the Americans, of course, thousands of illegal Americans who were all given, you know, the magic wand of amnesty. And now the Liberal government is talking again about another amnesty for another 200,000 illegal immigrants. Canada is famous around the world for 2 things. For many years, it was the country of choice for Russian spies to get the passports, because you could get them in the mail. And every Russian spy carried a Canadian passport. I kid you not. Many of them. And it's famous for the fact that if you know how to fiddle the ropes and produce the forged and dubious documents, easiest country in the world to walk into. And that's a fact. So if the Isenbergs were smart enough and shrewd enough and had enough money to hang on, they'd probably come under the next illegal amnesty. But because they're visible and declared themselves and have done this and that and the next thing, they're in the bureaucratic wheels. Now, according to what they told me out of Ottawa this morning, there is nothing that can be done for this family, but maybe there is something that can be done. Who knows? I'm going to go to the phones. How long have you been in the country? Barbara?
6 months.
6 months.
Right.
Good. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jock.
Yes.
I can hardly hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, well, my family goes back 5 generations. I pretty well was born into the sawmill business, and I'll tell you, because of too many people coming into the country from other countries, I don't want to name the kind of people that are working in the sawmill. I can't get a job. The mill I worked in closed down.
Are you talking about people who come on the family reunification program? Yes, you are.
Well, let's
whether
not
you
say
know it or not. But anyway, you're
one way or
against...
another. Once one of them makes foreman, that's it. No whites or Canadians get in.
Well, I don't want to go onto that aspect. You can take that up with the Human Rights Commission. You can take it up with the IWA.
Yeah, well, I think
you
our
fought out
country's being
against...
raped, and I think we should stop immigration in this country right now.
Okay, including the Isenbergs. He says. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Yes.
Yes, I've been listening here, and I was born in Canada, born in BC. I served with the Canadian Forces overseas for over 4 years, and I'm a member of the Canadian Legion, and I definitely think that this is the type of person that we need in this country. It just warmed me up to see those little kiddies singing "Oh Canada."
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please. Next one.
Good morning.
Morning.
Number one, I used to work in a very private club in Toronto,
Yes.
and the immigration scams that went on there were just beyond belief. Absolutely incredible, to the point where one saved all his money, then reported himself to immigration, and Canada paid his way back to his homeland. Now, this isn't an isolated incident. These people should be allowed to stay in this country. Just take a look at them. They're the sort of people that we need here.
Apart from the fact that they look the kind of people you would like, I'm making the point that the whole immigration system is so full of scams and illegalities and lack of knowledge between Bonn and Ottawa and Vancouver and all the rest of it. This book is a shocking expose of the immigration department. I have not seen one story in the newspapers about it. Not one.
Well, keep it up, Jack. Maybe we can do something about it. Bye.
Oh, yeah, I know. What's the chance of getting Axworthy? Now, I'm not about trying for Axworthy right now. I can't get Murray Perry back, because what I want to know out of the guys locally, they have not had a formal letter yet to go. All they've got is a date and a pink slip, and every time I've seen somebody leaving the country, they've had a formal letter saying that if you wish to go voluntarily, leave by such and such a date. Otherwise, they get deported. And of course, once you are officially deported, you can't re-enter the country again. That's if the immigration officials check the microfiche, which they're presently not using, according to this. From Prince George, go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack.
Yes.
With all the deadbeats running around this country drawing welfare, here we have a perfectly beautiful family who are not dependent on us for anything. Jack, isn't there such a thing as sponsoring a family in this country? A Canadian can sponsor a family?
It ain't all that easy. It can be done.
Because I'd be willing to sponsor those people.
You need a lot of money to sponsor them. You've got to guarantee they'll never go on welfare or go into a hospital or anything like that. You see, if they could come under family reunification, they'd be on MSA in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Well, it's a thought, ma'am, and thank you very much for your offer.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack.
Yes.
You know, that makes me sick. Immigration lets in numerous amount of other people on the boats and everything not so long ago. This family does not break a law to get deported. The kids speak good, are good-looking kids. The school stands up for them.
Yeah.
The gentleman's good in the metric system. He could help other people here learn it, because half of the Canadians are dumb about it. They don't know what they're doing in the metric system.
Mm-hmm.
And here you got this government acting like a bunch of idiots. To me, they should
Who's
shove
that?
the government guys and ship
Is it
them
prepared to go on?
overseas somewhere. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you very much. Where is he? Good morning, Murray.
Good morning, Jack.
Nice of you to call back, Murray.
Okay.
The point, I'm well aware of the fact that they have broken the regulations by applying from within Canada.
Yes.
But if you've seen the report of the Auditor General, you realize that 10% of all immigrants come in by ministerial discretion. Have you seen that?
Well, That includes people who are needed in the labor force in Canada because of specialties are one thing and another.
No, this is regularization of other things. And I haven't even given half of the report. But as you know well, if you've seen this report, that lots of people are coming in by illegal scams, forgeries, dubious documents, and thousands by ministerial discretion. Now, but I don't want to get you involved in that, Mary. That's not fair because you do a good job as a civil servant. What I want to ask you simply is this. The only document they have from immigration so far is a visitor form which says, depart Canada on or before 15 Jan. They've got no formal letter. What's the normal procedure for them next?
Well, at the time that, on the 17th of November, when Mr. Isenberg asked for a second extension to his visitor's stay, he was granted 2 months.
Right.
I haven't seen that document, but I believe it says 17th of January.
No, depart Canada on or before 15, but...
All right, that was 60 days from the day of issue.
Right, fair enough.
As far as we're concerned, that's the only document he needs.
Except that if he didn't go, you'd finally search him out in due course and ship them back, right?
It would cause an inquiry to be raised and take it from there, yes.
Oh, in other words, if he doesn't go, an inquiry will be held by a special inquiry officer.
That's right.
Oh, so that does leave room for action by him. He would appear with counsel at the special inquiry hearing, wouldn't he?
He hasn't got any appeal for that.
Is there no appeal for that?
No, because he doesn't have landed status. Visitors don't have rights of appeal in a case like that.
God, I can think of a dozen cases where special inquiry officers, where people have appealed with lawyers. I may be wrong in that, but is there nothing we can do to delay it for a week to see if he can get a ministerial discretion?
Well, that's already been discussed and it's been turned down.
Oh, did somebody ask for ministerial discretion?
Habt ihr Minister erlassen?
The entire case was forwarded here to the minister's office.
By your officials?
By our officials in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Just for corroboration that they had done what the law said they were to do.
Well, did anyone consider the fact that they've got a mobile home purchased for them by their parents for $50,000, which they can't even sell if they were to go?
That wasn't part of the consideration.
No, I know, I realize that. And he got himself a couple of jobs, but I can understand why Canada Employment didn't give him an okay. He was dealing...
This is Mr. Isenberg's first visit to Canada, and he was genuinely confused about what was and was not proper. Then, you know, there would be other considerations.
Because he's been here...
In this particular case, we're absolutely convinced that Mr. Isenberg knew exactly what the rules were, exactly what was required of anyone coming to Canada as a potential immigrant, and he chose to ignore them.
Well, that may be your belief of it, and you may be right, but the fact remains that this report shows that your overseas office is in all that efficient, and ipso facto they could well have been told by somebody in Bonn, and they could well have followed it sincerely. I'm not saying they did, but they could have.
As I told Steve Wyatt a little earlier, we asked the Bonn office about this particular case, and they most vehemently denied ever having said that to anybody.
Well, somebody may have said it. Of course, Isenberg hasn't got the name of the official, which is a pity, isn't it? Yeah, no, I realize
it would make things a lot easier.
I realize it's a jackpot case, and I can't hammer you on what it says in the Auditor General's report, but my God, I'm sure that there are some red faces in the department in Ottawa when they look at that report. However, that's not fair to involve you in that. Okay, well...
The other way, Jack, here's an example of where we're trying to do what the Auditor General wants us to do, and that is uphold the law of Canada.
Well, that would be a change, it would seem, by looking at the Auditor General's report. A considerable change. But anyway, maybe you could ask the minister when he's out on the coast on the 28th if he could appear with me on the program to discuss the specific scams and illegalities and lack of follow-through as shown in Dye's report. Would you do that for me, Murray?
If the schedule allows it, Jack, I am sure that Mr. Axworthy would be delighted to go on your show.
Sure, or I'll take a senior department official with him, but it's the detail of the scams and the illegalities I want.
All right.
Because everybody wants law-abiding immigrants, but it would seem that we've got thousands of non-law-abiding immigrants who fiddle their way into the country on family reunification and ministerial discretion. But anyway, I'm grateful for your help, Murray. You always have been a help, and it's dangerous for me to pat a civil servant in the back, but consider yourself patted.
Thank you, and that's the 28th of January you want.
Yeah, 28th of January, but I don't know what the hell you're going to do with the Isenbergs. Thanks for your help, Murray.
Okay, Jack.
Bad news though it is, thank you for your help. How much have I got to go? He actually is a good guy and very straightforward. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jacques.
Yeah.
I just happened to be home today. I'm on vacation. I'm a financial assistance worker with the Ministry of Human Resources. I'm watching your program this morning, and it makes me absolutely sick that these people are being deported back to Germany. If I could disclose information to you, people on my caseload at this point that came to Canada on a visitor's visa, applied for landed immigrant status, received it, have been collecting social assistance for approximately 5 years. It's unbelievable that these people have come to Canada. He has found employment. They have secured themselves within our society and are now being asked to leave the country, when every day on my caseload in my office, I see people that have been sponsored to come to Canada under the agreement that the sponsor will provide for these people, and within a year after being in the country, they are on income assistance.
That's right, and they get full welfare, as I understand.
Full welfare, full medical
They're
benefits.
supposed to be sponsored, there's supposed to be a charge against the sponsor, and they go straight on social assistance. And they're allowed to stay on social assistance.
That's right. We do interview the sponsor about one to two times a year, and we review the sponsor's situation. At this point, I have closed some of my immigrant files.
Hold on a second, love. Although you can't tell me any secrets, don't go away. I got to take my break right now. Would you hold on? Yeah. Hold on 6 after the break. I'll let you know what happens. It does not look good at the moment at all. Tomorrow I've got a couple of interesting things. I've got, I had Hare Krishna on last week, Gopal Krishna Goswami. Tomorrow I'm going to have an ex-Krishna on who doesn't say such nice things about the sect. So Gopal, be sure you watch it. And Brian Smith, the Minister of Energy in Victoria, the Government of Victoria. Best of luck to the Isenbergs. Okay? 9 a.m. precisely. Immigration rackets on Czech TV at midnight precisely. Brian Smith, BC Energy Minister, tomorrow, 9 a.m. precisely. Brian Smith, BC Energy Minister, tomorrow, 9 a.m. precisely. Brian Smith, BC Energy Minister, tomorrow, 9 a.m. precisely.